Hey everyone, welcome to episode 6 of the Entry Point Hunting Podcast. I am flying solo today, and with me, oh, that doesn't make any sense. Okay, I'm going to restart that over. Hey everyone, welcome to episode 6 of the Entry Point Hunting Podcast. Today I'm excited to have back Dan Ulmer, and Dan is going to be talking to us about reloads and ammo. It's a very hot topic, and a lot of people are interested in whether or not they should be doing it, how to do it, the best way to do it. And Dan is the man who is going to talk to us all about those questions today. So without further ado, let's bring Dan on. Dan, how's it going?
Hey, I'm doing well. Thanks. How are you, Jacina?
I am good. I am good. Thank you so much for being back on the show today. It is always a treat. You are a wealth of knowledge, so I'm looking forward to picking your brain today on reloading and ammo and all that goodness.
Yeah, my pleasure. It's a super in-depth topic. Uh, I don't think I could be an expert in it if I'd been doing it my whole life, but I'll do my best.
Well, you're the closest thing we've got to an expert because I know absolutely nothing. So you'll be doing much better than me on explaining things, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's dive into it a little bit. I don't know if you want to touch on perhaps the different types of ammo that you reload or different types of ammo that can be reloaded? Like, can you reload everything?
You can reload most things, with the exception of rimfire, generally speaking. So it's
Okay.
technically you actually can reload rimfire 22 LR, for example, but it's not very popular. It's very tedious. It's not worth it, generally speaking. So all the rimfire guys usually will lot test to get the right ammo for their rifle and their setup.
Yeah.
Instead, anything center fire, generally speaking, can be reloaded though. So whether
Okay.
you're doing it for target shooting competition, it's a huge advantage in that field as well as the hunting realm too. So I do it for both of those, and just about anything from 17 Fireball all the way up to 450 Bushmaster. If you wanted to, you can reload.
Okay. And can you also, I mean, this is maybe going off on a little bit of a tangent already, but can you reload things like shotgun shells?
Yeah, absolutely you can. And
Okay.
a lot of time that's what the professionals do in competition as well as for some hunting applications too. But you can reload slugs, you can reload buck, and you can definitely reload shot. There's special presses and special components that are designed for the shotgun world. And generally speaking, for a target shot, it doesn't make sense financially, but you can get a better result. So I think
Okay.
one way you can bracket reloading in general is that people get into it thinking they're going to save a bit of money, and they
Ha
don't.
ha ha ha.
Exactly right, but
Joke's on you.
yeah, I like to think that I get a better product, a better matched ammunition to my rifle and my applications, and I can shoot more of it. So you don't
Mm.
end up saving money. Dollar for dollar, round for round, it's cheaper to reload for sure. But once you
Mm.
add up all of your equipment and your time and things like that, it doesn't usually end up being cheaper. You just get a better result for yourself and for your rifle, and
Yeah.
generally you're able to shoot more. So
So I guess maybe dive into that aspect of it. So if somebody is considering reloading, like why would somebody want to reload? You've touched on it a little bit, but maybe dive into it more. What is the benefit of reloading your own ammo?
for sure. So a few things, I guess. Firstly, when you're talking about the centerfire rifle world, getting tuning a load to your rifle is probably one of the biggest advantages. So when you buy factory ammo, you can lot test, or you can test a few different types of ammunition manufacturers and see what your rifle likes. That's great. But in the reloading world, it allows you to tune very specifically the type of projectile, the type of primer, the primer seating depth, the powder charge, the type of powder, the seating depth of the projectile, different aspects with your neck tension, different aspects to your case besides that. And it just allows you to really tune and hone around to your rifle, to your
Right.
particular barrel. And as we know, every rifle is different. We could buy two rifles off the same rack, and mine would prefer one load over another. It allows you to tune that. So that would be
Yeah.
probably foremost. Secondly, it allows you to pick a projectile that works for your type of application. So factory ammo is not always available in the type of projectile, and that's a huge thing, especially in the hunting world. is whether you want to go monolithic full copper bullets, if you want to pick a high-end, high BC bonded bullet or something like that, that's going to be more tuned to the type of hunting you're going to be doing, type of game you're going after. It allows you to take the load that you know and all your componentry into load a particular projectile that suits you a little bit better.
Yeah.
Gives you more options that way. And I guess you could say once you have accounted for all of the equipment that it takes to set up to get reloading going, it does allow you to get more rounds quicker and cheaper, I guess you could say. So we
Yeah.
all know
If you don't account for all those other costs. Yeah.
yeah. So and you don't value your time. That's
Yeah.
you don't put a money
So
value on
nice.
your time, which you better not if you get into this game because
Yeah.
it is very time consuming. Uh, but just generally speaking, like 20 rounds of good 308 ammo, let's say, is $70, $80. It can be sometimes. So you can get that down to like a lot closer to $1.50, $2 a round if you were to
Mm.
reload. Just if you're adding componentry up,
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
time. So there is a bit of a cost barrier to getting into it, equipment wise, and that, like anything else, you can do fairly economically. There is a lot of products out there that allows you to get into reloading fairly cheaply,
Hmm.
or you can pick somewhere in the middle, or you can go crazy. It can be very expensive, and there's a lot of
Yeah.
equipment out there, but
We will
it's
definitely dive
honestly,
into that for sure.
oh, for sure, yeah. It's
Um,
preface this
I
whole
want,
thing as well too, in saying that reloading is one of the deepest rabbit holes that you will ever stick your head down. You can go as far as you possibly want with being
yeah.
pedantic about how you do it, and a lot of people have a lot of opinions about it. You can do it fairly quickly and economically as well too if you want to, but when you get into it, it's hard not to take it pretty far. So
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to invest that amount of money and time, I mean, you might not put a dollar value on your time, but if you're going to invest that amount of time into doing it, you might as well do it right. Right.
right,
So,
right,
yeah.
and yeah, you're chasing the advantages that are there. It just takes some time to do sometimes.
Yeah. Okay. I want to go back to something that you said a little bit ago. So, when you're picking the type of ammo that you're going to reload for your gun, so like you said, my gun is going to like something different than what your gun does. How do you determine that? So is it the same process of you buy a whole bunch of different types of ammo, you figure out what your gun likes, and then you just shoot a whole bunch of those until you have empty shells that you can then reload? Like, how do you determine what ammo you are reloading for your gun?
Or how to tune the load to your gun, you mean more? Yeah, so
Yeah,
yeah,
because
like
I mean, if I'm shooting a box of Hornady versus a box of Federal blue box stuff, I mean, those are different casings or shells or what, I don't know what the proper terminology is, but it's a different format for each of them that my gun might like differently, one or the other.
yeah, so usually what's going on with factory ammo, it's a different recipe. So your projectile is going to be different, the case itself is going to be different, the powder is going to be different, and the primer is going to be different, and the seating depth of the bullet would be a normal SAMI spec. So that's just sort of all of the componentry put together. However, they decide to do that
Hmm.
may or may not be the best result for your rifle. So when you reload, you get a chance to break that all apart into its component pieces and start from the ground up. So to answer your question, generally, yeah, you will pick. You will know each round also has sort of or each caliber, I should say, has a range of componentry that generally is known to work well. So powders, primers, and projectiles weights, I guess you could say. So you would pick a few that you know. So let's just say 6.5 Creedmoor, let's say. That's something I started reloading with a while back. So you know that you're generally going to have a 140 grain bullet or around there. You
Hmm.
know, generally speaking, that H4350 is going to be a powder that works for it fairly well. There's other powders you can try as well, but you'll
And
know.
how do you know that, Dan? Is that just from research or that's like common knowledge
Yeah,
once you start into the reloading world?
it's generally research. Like it's fairly available. This sort of information. There are reloading manuals too that you can buy
Okay.
from manufacturers of your componentry that will tell you which powders or the burn rates. It's all about the burn rate of the powder, how
Mm,
fast or slow it burns. So you
right.
know what cartridge class like 308 class, let's say for 6.5 Creedmoor, is going to require which powders. Now, specifically which powder, you're right in that you would probably, if you're starting from the beginning and you've never reloaded this caliber before, you would try a few. You'd pick 2 or 3 powders, maybe. You'd pick 2 or 3 projectiles, and you would probably just pick one primer. Any so there's small rifle and large rifle primers for centerfire cases, and generally speaking, you'd sort of just pick one. They don't make a huge difference picking between the two if they're not a Magnum primer, if they're just a normal large rifle non-Magnum primer. So yeah, 6.5 Creedmoor, for example, is a little bit of a cheater round in that it's so popular. Everybody knows that you start with a 140 grain bullet and H4350. That's
Right.
just sort of one of those things that you know. But if you didn't know that, you'd do research on the forums and you'd talk
You'd
to
watch this
people.
podcast
You can
and
do
then
that.
you'd know.
Yeah, absolutely. And the manuals out there are pretty good. So yeah, you'd pick a few and you'd load up a few rounds and you'd see which ones tend to perform better. Um, One of the tools that you really need to evaluate your rounds, it's very handy to have, is a chronograph. So if you have a chronograph and you can uh, figure out how fast your rounds are going and the standard deviation and the extreme spread of the ladder, I guess, that you load up, it tells you a lot about what if you're succeeding here, if you're going down the right, barking up the right tree, kind of thing. So yeah, you definitely pick a few componentry, different pieces of components, and try them out. Your rifle, like factory ammo, will prefer a given bullet. Generally, that's
Right.
the two biggest factors that you'd be playing with would be bullet type and weight, and powder type. So, and then powder charge, obviously, as well too. But
Yeah.
that's kind of the broad strokes of where you start. But yeah, you just it allows you, we go into depth in that, but that's sort of the basis of what you're trying to do is pick
Okay.
the best combination of primer, powder, and projectile.
Okay. So that's how you figure out what you're going to be reloading. So when you once you've determined that, okay, so you've picked all of those components and you said, okay, I'm going to start reloading. Is there an economical setup that allows you to do that versus a super expensive one? And what would you recommend to people that are starting off down that road?
Sure. So I would recommend to sort of save a little bit of time, you would pick a bullet that you want. I generally start this way. I found that I can tune a bullet to pretty much perform how I like to with a lot of the other variables. So I would pick a bullet. So let's say in the hunting world, you know that you want a monolithic copper bullet, so you know roughly what weight you want. For example, from how I do it, I shoot 300 short wind short WSM, and I knew that I wanted 165 grain copper bullets, so I chose the Hornady GMX 165 GMX. I also tried the Barnes TTSX, which is a copper bullet as well too, but I knew I wanted a copper bullet, so I started with that.
Okay, can I pause you there for 1 second?
Sure, yeah.
What made you decide, and I mean, this is like dancing on the edge of a very touchy subject, but why would you pick copper versus like the standard lead bullet that's out there?
Okay, good question. I'm a big believer in bullet selection for what you're trying to do. It makes a huge difference. So some guys will shoot anything with like a target round, let's say, or whatever. I'm a big believer in choosing the right bullet. So for me, for big game, um, I've used bonded bullets before in the past, which a lead core bonded bullet, like a NOS or AccuBond, which perform pretty well. But I wanted to see what was going on with this whole copper thing because it's getting pretty popular. There's a couple of advantages for it. Some places, some states in the states, for example, it's mandated that it's illegal to use lead, kind of thing. So it's
Yeah.
starting to become a bit more popular. Not having lead in your meat's a big thing, but I think the biggest driving factor for me was I wanted a bullet that would not come apart and hold all of its weight. So copper
Mm.
bullets are known for expanding still, but being able to drive through a lot of bone, a lot of hide, and still stay together. So they're
Yeah.
super durable. They don't lose any of their weight as they're driving through flesh and bone, and they still expand. So something that
Yeah.
dumps all of its energy but doesn't lose any of its weight, kind of thing. So I have a moose hunt coming up pretty soon. I wanted to be able to, you know, all it takes is a half a step right, and it goes from a double lung shot to straight through a shoulder. So
Yeah.
for me, I wanted something that could drive right through a moose shoulder, expand well, dump all of its energy, and not have any lead come apart in my meat. So
Yeah.
it's a personal choice. There are other great bullets for hunting as well too, but I don't think really anything beats a monolithic bullet for punching through bone and staying together.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Glad we went down that little tangent.
Yeah.
While we are on this tangent, can I get you to put your phone on silent? Because every time it dings, it's super loud or
It
whatever that is.
should be. I think what's going on is it's my partner's laptop, and it might be
Oh shit.
getting texts.
Oh,
I don't
okay.
think I can stop that actually.
I don't know if you can. It just every time it dings, it takes over the whole audio.
Oh, I apologize. It's
That's
not my
okay.
phone. It's coming through somewhere else.
Jackie, come on.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. I'll just get Drew to chop this little chunk out. Hopefully it doesn't ding a whole bunch more times, but
Yeah,
that's okay.
it's not coming
Okay,
up on.
so what's that?
It's not coming up on my side either, so I don't know what's going on.
Oh, okay.
Anyways,
Okay, so once you've decided that you're shooting either copper or lead or monolithic bullets or whatever, then what's your next step?
okay, so yeah, chosen my bullet and my bullet weight. Um, for monolithic bullets, for example, you want light for caliber. So for my 300 Win short Win, I wanted a 165. So pick your weight, um, and then you would pick your powder, which you can try a few different powders. I knew I like to do the research to figure out, generally speaking, what the best powder burn rate is for a
Yeah.
given caliber as well as bullet selection. So I kind of knew H40 350 for myself was going to be the one as well.
Mhm.
There's usually two or three powders that will do a pretty good job. So let's just say I got two different powders. I think H4895 shortcut is another one that works well for the short Magnum cases. So yeah, so you'd pick your powder and you would pick a primer. And again, that's not uber critical as long as you stick to the same primer. So I picked Federal 215M Magnum primers, which just have good reviews, kind of thing, in
Mhm.
cold weather for short Magnum cases.
Okay.
And yeah, and then so that's pretty much it. You have your bullet, you have your case. That's another thing you need to buy is a case. A good quality casings are super important. You can buy sort of cheaper ones, but the better ones, Nosler and
So
Lapua.
you're buying your casings to reload. You're not like shooting a whole bunch of ammo and ending up with a bunch of cases that you're then reloading?
You can do that if you find factory ammo that you have a case that you like. You can
Okay.
absolutely do that. I actually did that for one of my 6.5 Creedmoor target loads. I found Berger had a factory ammo loading that used Lapua large rifle cases, and so I just bought a whole bunch of that and shot a match with that, and then ended up with some really top quality brass, which is great because then it's fire formed to your chamber and you got a great starting point.
Okay.
So, but you can
See, that
absolutely.
was kind of what I was asking earlier. I didn't realize. I mean, I just automatically assumed reloading would mean that it was already loaded, that you're not just buying empty cases already.
Okay, no, and absolutely. No, you buy them off the shelf in bags or
Oh,
boxes of just
okay.
virgin brass, it's called. And then there's a couple of processes you do to it to make sure it's ready for its first load. But yeah, your first firing of that brass is fire forming to your particular chamber. So usually um, your very first firing is slightly less accurate, and then once you've got that round through, you're good to go. I've had great luck with virgin brass as well too. It gets pretty good accuracy,
Yeah.
but yeah, you buy it off the shelf. You got your bullet,
Okay.
you got your brass, you got your primer and your powder. And I guess to answer your question with component or tools and equipment for cost wise, there are ways to sort of go about it fairly cheaply. There's kits from Hornady and Lee and RCBS that pretty much have comprehensive uh, sets of equipment and tools that you need to reload.
Yeah.
You're still, so for one of those kits, you're still probably going to spend about $1,000 kind of for the most
Yeah.
basic setup, and that would have maybe a beam scale to measure your powder, and it would have a like a hand priming tool and just an average press and things like that. So there, it is doable. There's other things that you need, like a good set of calipers, good set of verniers is super important, and there's a couple things that it's not going to come with, but generally speaking, you can get into the whole world of it for, I don't know, $1,000 to $2,000, I guess you could say. And
Yep, that's definitely not cheaper than just buying ammo.
you can buy a
I'm
lot
like,
of
that doesn't even
stuff.
come with a chronograph to measure your speeds and anything.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
no, that's definitely not a chronograph. So um,
Yeah.
I bet, I haven't really been into that beginner kit world for a long time. There might be kits from RCBS and Hornady that are a bit cheaper than that. So don't quote me here. I could be off a little bit. You might, $700 or $800 might pretty much get a comprehensive kit, but that'll get you your press, which is important. Some way of measuring powder. It'll get you a trimming tool, a priming tool, um, chamfering and deburring for your cases, a
Yeah.
few things like that. So generally speaking, it'll get you most of the way there.
Okay. Um, and so if somebody were to go and pick themselves up a kit of some kind, whether it be cheap or, I mean, okay, so that's kind of on the low end of things. Let's say 700 to $1,000 to get into the game. What is your current setup? Would that cost?
So
Just ballpark.
yeah, I've picked some of the tools and componentry that I feel is important to have on the higher end of things, but my setup isn't a dream setup. It's not a crazy setup. So I've just picked the tools that I really like. I don't know if I had to pick a dollar figure of what I'm into it for all my reloading gear. I would probably say 3 or 4 grand if I had to put a number on it.
Okay.
But you
That's
can go
not bad.
a
I thought you
lot,
were going to be way higher.
yeah, you can go a lot farther than that. So I have an RCBS Charge Master Lite it's an auto trickler for powder, weighing powder. It does it
Mm,
automatically. Um, and you can spend 4 grand on just a powder scale, like an auto
wow.
trickler powder scale. So
It's important.
that,
It's a very important aspect.
yeah, that's a big part of it. You can
Yeah.
trickle it out onto a beam scale, or just if you
Yeah.
had an accurate scale too. It's not something that's necessary. It's good for volume. Like if I'm doing 200 rounds for a competition, it really helps because it can throw a charge in 10 seconds, 8 to 10 seconds kind of thing, instead of spending 60 seconds trickling it out yourself. So
Yeah.
there's things like that.
Time savers.
Yeah. Annealing is another sort of area where you can spend a lot of money. The industry standard for annealing cases is called an amp annealer. It's a New Zealand company that came out with an
Hmm.
induction annealing machine. They're about 2.5 grand just for the annealer.
Yeah.
I ended up actually building myself an induction annealer,
Wow.
just piecing one together from online or whatever. So if you're kind of handy or you're good with electronics, you can save a little bit of money that way. I got about $300 into that machine, so
Yeah.
that saves me a lot of money. But yeah, I've picked the areas. A good auto trickling charge throwing scale is important. A good press is important. Good set of calipers is super important. Um,
Yeah.
good dies, that's another thing as well too. You can get dies from anywhere, but how you choose to go about fulling three sizing is, you can do a few different ways. So there's a
Yeah, see,
couple
now
of
now you're talking different languages. I don't even know what any of that means. So I
yeah,
I don't know I don't know how in depth into the rabbit hole we want to go because I'm sure it would be much more easy to explain if there was a visual component to go with it. But
yeah.
um
I mean, I have
yeah,
all my stuff here. I could, but I tell you, this is a deep hole. Like, it's
yeah.
taken me years to really get my head around my process.
Yeah.
That's another
Can
thing.
you
Like, we could go through the process, but it's and I can do my best with. visual aids, but it's a fairly in-depth process. I can give you
Yeah.
the quick version if you wanted.
Yeah. Give me the Coles Notes version of over years of experience, what you've determined as your standardized process.
Right. Okay. So fire your round. You end up with a dirty case, empty case, primer in. So the very first thing I'll do is get a decapping die to remove the primer. Decapping die ends up going in your press, and all this does is use this little pin to reach through the case and punch the primer out. So I'm removing the primer is step one.
Okay.
Step two is I'm taking a cleaning tool, a primer pocket cleaning tool. So that's called the primer pocket, where the primer used to seat. Cleaning out, there's some hard carbon in there. I clean that out. Next stage is you clean your brass. So I have a wet tumbler, and it uses stainless steel pins and some soap and Lemmy Shine, and you tumble your brass to clean your brass. It gets everything in and out super clean. Primer pocket super clean. So you dry your brass or let it dry. The next stage is to anneal your brass, and annealing is the process of heating the neck and shoulder junction up just shy of red hot, and it softens the brass. So as you fire the brass, it expands into the chamber, seals the chamber, and it springs back ever so slightly. And the motion of the brass or moving the metal around work hardens the metal. So it just means then this is not technically a necessary step for every reload. I absolutely will do it every reload. I think it's super important. But to anneal the neck, it just means that you're taking that work hardening away, and you're bringing it back to the softness that it's designed to be. So when you resize the case and you press your bullet into the neck, your neck tension is very consistent. That's the biggest thing. So reloading is all about consistency. Everything you're doing, you have to do the exact same from case to case.
Yeah.
No matter what.
I can tell you a story about what happens if you don't. We'll get there afterwards, but continue with your process.
Perfect. So it's annealed now. It's induction anneal. You can use flame to anneal it. There's a couple other ways as well too. But so you've annealed your brass. Now it's clean. Next is to resize your brass. So you use a resizing die, a full-length resizing die. It's important. A lot of people used to just neck size. So that's...
When you say that, what are you resizing exactly?
So like I said, when the round goes off, this brass will expand. It'll almost liquefy. It'll just expand to the outside of the chamber. There's 60, 70,000 PSI inside the case as it's going off. So the brass will expand to the chamber, which isn't very far, but it's a little bit. The neck will blow out to release the bullet as it starts to go out, to get pushed out of the case, and it'll spring back. So when it springs back, that's why they use brass as rifle casings. That instant spring back is what allows you to extract the round out of the chamber. What you have left, though, is that your case body, generally from a little bit above the head all the way up to the end there, is bigger now. It's a different size. So your neck has blown out. You no longer can hold a bullet in here, and you no longer can, generally speaking, chamber this back into your chamber well or easily. So a full-length resizing die is, let's grab one. This is a Forester die, and it doesn't look like much, and I've taken a few bits out of it, but it's the exact mimicking a chamber inside here, but a little bit smaller. So as you force, you have to lube up your case, and then you force it with a press. You thread this into a press, and your casing will come up. It'll slide into the die, and it'll crush the case equally and uniformly all the way around. It'll resize the full length of the case. So it'll
Interesting.
Bring your neck down, and you're bumping your shoulder junction back a couple of thousandths as well, and you're sizing down the case. So this allows you to be able to hold a bullet in it again, the neck that is, and be able to resize the case down so it will easily chamber back into your rifle. So that's the process of lubing up the case and putting it in and out of a die. So now
Okay.
you've done that, you need to clean that lube off. I use a dry tumbler to clean it off for an hour or whatever.
An hour. Wow. Okay.
Yeah,
This is not a fast process.
no, especially if you're doing 100 or 200 cases. So it does take time.
How many can you put in your wet tumbler or your dry tumbler at a time?
I'd say about 200. Depends on the caliber.
Oh, okay. It's
Just
quite
sort of,
big.
yeah. This is my 6XC competition, about 308 size roughly. You can fit about 200, 250 maybe, sort of thing. You can get
Okay.
large ones that can do about 400.
Yeah.
Um,
So
so
we're not talking like a handful at a time. You're
no,
doing a good quantity at a time.
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
You do everything here in batches. You'll do one process for all of it, and the next
Yeah.
process for all of it. So
Okay.
you have to break it into afternoons or after work sometimes to do the whole
Yeah.
thing. But
Like how
yeah,
long would it take you to do a batch of 200?
uh, I'd break that into, if I was going hard and I had a competition on the weekend, I'd do it in probably in 2 evenings. But
Two
I
evenings,
would,
like solid evenings after work.
oh yeah, like 2, 3, 4 hours a session kind of thing. Um,
Okay.
depends depends on your process and how deep you go as well too. But yeah, it takes a while. A couple hundred
Yeah.
rounds will take a while. So
Wow.
especially if you
Okay.
really value the consistency of your ammo and you really want to make top quality ammo, it does take time. So
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so
so
you've resized.
yeah, you resize and you've cleaned the resizing lube off of your
Yeah.
case. So now there's a couple things you want to do. You want to check for overall case length. Now, as rounds go off over time and over reloadings, the brass flows from the thick case web area up into the neck, and it makes your case overall a little bit longer. So
Hmm.
your chamber has a max spec that will allow space-wise. It's just a limitation, and you have to use your calipers and check your overall length. If it needs trimming, not all cases, not all calibers need trimming every reload. Some of them do, some of them don't. I usually trim about every second reload,
Hmm.
and you have a trimming tool, and all you're really doing is just uniformly trimming the top of the case mouth of the neck there off. So to a
You have
certain,
to do this. You have to trim every single one every other time you reload it?
yeah, oh yeah, it
Wow.
doesn't take too long. I have a powered little unit that has a collet, and you just slide it in, and it just has a little cutter in it, and it takes it off, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So after that, now if you do that or not, the next step is chamfering and deburring the case mouth. You have to do this every time, no matter if you trim. If you trim, it's even worse because you have a fresh cut on the end here. But chamfering and deburring is just a process of, and you can do this by hand or you can do this on a powered unit, of just chamfering the inside and the outside of the case neck so that your bullet slotting in has no resistance or no burr or no lip, and B, on the outside, it can chamber into your chamber perfectly. So it's just sometimes the tumbling process can peen or just deform the neck, the very
Mm,
very tip kind of thing. So you're just chamfering and deburring.
yeah.
Um,
Okay, wait, pause. I wanted to go back one step. How many times can you reload a single case?
good question. So that depends entirely on a few things. One, the caliber, and two, how hard you run the cases. So magnum cases or high pressure cases or cases that have a lot of powder in them uh, have less life to them, generally speaking. It also depends on the type of brass you choose. If you choose quality brass, Lapua brass, let's say, will get you more reloads than Winchester brass, just generally speaking.
Mm,
But more importantly, it is how hard you run them. So if you, in the process of reloading, you get to choose your powder charge and how fast your bullet's going. So you're kind of aiming for a certain speed, let's say, and then within that speed, you tune your powder charge to get a certain speed using accuracy. So like you'll do what I call an accuracy test. That's sort of another story we can get into, but you're changing your powder charge until you find a node, an accuracy node. So if you're running it hard, if you're running it right near max pressure of a case, and there are pressure signs that you're looking for to see where it starts to get
mm,
dangerous or where you want to get to and then back off a little bit.
yeah,
You run it right near max charge for a particular case, you'll get less case life out of it than you would if
right.
you were running it on a slower node. So, generally speaking, I can generalize a little bit here. Every caliber is a little bit different. Of the ones I've reloaded, like let's say for the 308 class of cases, so for 308, 6.5 Creedmoor, 6XC, 6 Creedmoor, 708, like that sort of middle short action classification, you can expect with quality brass, and if you're not running too hard, 10 to 15 reloads is pretty easy.
Oh,
Some guys
wow.
can get closer to 20.
Yeah.
Um,
That's way more than I expected.
yeah. There's no reason generally why you can't get 15 reloads out of most calibers, and even some Magnum calibers as well too. You can get well over 10 kind of thing. You're
So
always
when you say, sorry, go ahead.
no. I was just gonna say you're always monitoring your cases. You're checking them. That's part of your process too. Is if you start to see any split necks or you're checking
Yeah.
for case head separation. The biggest giveaway to a worn out case is that your primer pockets have blown out, and when you seat a new primer in it, it doesn't seat well. And this is a feel
Mm,
thing. If you're using a hand primer tool, that means your case head is expanded too much, and it can't hold a primer. It's pretty much junk. So you're always
yeah.
watching for those things.
And so when you say at the last stage that we were just talking about that you might be trimming down the neck a little bit, like if you're trimming it down 15 times, by the time you're done that, like is your bullet base like on that particular casing that you're holding, you actually have like a distinctive like little neck piece that's, smaller than the rest of the body. So after 15 reloads, are you down to like no neck anymore?
No. So I might not explain that well, but basically, your overall length never changes. So over the reloads, brass
Mm, right.
brass will
It's
flow.
expanding up
Yeah,
and you're
it's
shortening it.
flowing from the
Right.
case head up to there. So this
Yeah.
little shoulder to neck junction never changes. It'll be a little bit too long, let's say after 2 reloads, so you trim it down.
I
Then
see.
2 more firings, more brass will flow up and it'll get longer. So that's another
Yeah.
way in
Okay.
which your cases kind of have a lifespan, is that the web of your case will slowly start to erode. Usually other things will cause failure before that does, but
Yeah, I was gonna
that's
say what fails first, because if your case is slowly getting thinner and thinner because it's slowly expanding upwards, I mean, yeah, either that or the primer seat is going, I
yeah.
guess.
Yeah, 9 times out of 10, your primer pockets have expanded too much to hold a primer, or
Okay.
you can just feel that they're just too loose. So when they're getting too loose, you're scared of it falling out. It doesn't have to be falling out, but you can tell when they're getting a little bit loose. That's
Yeah.
number one. That's 9 times out of 10. 1 time out of 10, you'll split the case neck, so
Mm,
will actually be a split there. You'll see that, and you look for that as you're going through and handling your cases. Uh, every once in a while, this doesn't happen nearly as much as people tend to think it does, but you can get a case head separation where the web is thinning um, on the inside there, right where the head sort of meets the rest of the body. There's a taper on the inside that can separate.
mm,
That can be an
that's cool.
explosive sort of failure.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen very often at all, and there's ways for checking for that on the inside. You can't really start to see it until it happens almost. So
Yeah.
it's not something I've ever run into or anyone I know has ever run into. You
Yeah.
hear it happen every once in a while, but mostly it's primer pockets. Every once in a while, it's a neck split.
Okay. Okay, so back to the process. You
Yeah.
you've
Okay.
you've
So
trimmed you've trimmed
trim
the top if
the
you
neck.
needed.
Yep. And
Yeah,
you've deburred and chamfered the case mouth.
right.
So now it's pretty much ready for the loading process. So it's already been annealed as well too. So next you would press primers in. So you have priming tool, different methods of doing this. You can do it on your press. I have a hand priming tool. I really like the hand ones. It gives you a lot of feel. You can feel the seating pressure it takes to seat a primer. So they uh, they basically have a little tray. You can load 100 primers or so into it. And you stick your case head into it, and it just heats a primer. So you do that, and then your next process would be um, the powder
So are you
charging
saying
powder.
you do that manually? Like you'll do 200 of those manually?
Yeah, for sure. I'll show you the
Okay.
tool here. Give you some context. So this is a little tray, and this is the tool itself. And you basically just making that motion. You stick your case into your little shell holder here, and then you'll. It's the wrong case holder for it. That's the
Yeah.
process, and the feel of that coming down and seating. There's like a stop to it or whatever, and you can feel how much resistance is going on.
Mm,
Gives you a super good indication of the life of your cases because you can feel the primer
mm.
going. So
Interesting. Okay.
yeah, there's other ways of
Neat.
doing it, but that's my favorite. Uh, so loading, charging your actual case. So you got your primer in now. You're charging your case. Different ways to do that, of course, but you'll do your different powder charges when you're doing your load development. Once you know that, it's pretty easy. It's the same powder charge every time. You have a little funnel, and you either measured it out with a hand trickler or an automatic trickler of some kind. You
Yeah.
fill your case, then you will stick a seating die into your press, and you will press a bullet into your neck. So there's lots of little steps I missed there as what you're doing with your case when you're resizing it. You're bumping the
Mm.
shoulder back a little bit, and you're doing a lot of measurements. One of the things
Yeah.
that's really handy to have is a comparator, and this is a case comparator that allows you to reference off the shoulder a datum point on the shoulder here to the case head. As you're
Mm.
resizing, you're bumping that back to a certain amount. But the other aspect to this is using a bullet comparator. And the next step is seating your bullet into your case mouth, which is basically the process of pressing it with a little seeder die. And it presses on the ogive of the bullet, and it presses it down to a very specific seating depth, which is
Mm.
a hugely important part of your process as
Yeah.
far as the tune goes. How far you press your bullet in and the jump that it has before it engages the rifling of your barrel is a super important part. But that's what the die allows you to tune that. It's got a micrometer on the top. It allows you to tune the seating depth, and you press the bullet in, and that's it. You're pretty much done, ready to fire.
Wow. That's a lengthy process to get there.
Yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
that's the super super quick version of it. But that's the
Yeah.
basics of it. Really, is you're just you're pressing an old primer out, you're resizing the case, you're charging a new case, putting a new primer in, and seating a bullet.
So when you're doing it for your particular circumstance, because you do competition shoot and you also hunt, um, are you ever messing around with the charge that's in there, trying to max it out or drop it back? Or like, are you just doing sort of a midway? This is going to be like an average bullet. Like what do you reload yours to be and why?
Um, I guess uh, what you're getting at is sort of the load development phase versus once you found your load and then
Yeah.
you're just reloading. So yeah, it's two separate sort of processes. The load development, the process of finding the load and tuning the load to your rifle, gets fairly involved, and that's where you're using different powders and different charges and different seating depths, and that takes a while. Like it's not something you can do pretty quick. You have to use your chronograph to reference or to verify what you're doing. So that process, you're doing a lot of making a lot of changes. You're trying to only change one element at a time, but you're
Yeah.
definitely making a lot of changes. Once you found that load and you confirmed it, generally speaking, it's rinse and repeat. You can just do the same
So
load.
sorry to go back to that. How do you know that you found the right load? Like, I guess that's what I'm asking. How do you know what is the ultimate load for the ammo that you're reloading or for your gun?
Okay, yeah, no, that's a great question. That's the crux of what we're actually trying to achieve here. So, um, to try to simplify that, I would say that I break it down, and there's a lot of different theory in this as well to how you
Mhm.
arrive at the load that you're trying to get to. So I break it down into a few different steps. So the first step, I find my max pressure. So I'm doing what's called a pressure test, and this is basically loading one round with different. So I know roughly what velocity I'm trying to achieve just through
Okay.
research. So you know that a 6.5 Creedmoor is pretty safe between 2,700 and 2,800 feet per second. So you basically, but you don't know how much powder it takes to get there with that particular bullet, right? So what you're doing is
Okay.
loading. I would load one bullet or one case with an incrementally greater powder charge by about half a grain. So powder is measured in grains as well as bullet
Mhm.
weight. So I would start at what I knew was well under max pressure, and I would load half a grain increments with one bullet each until I knew I was over. I was like getting ridiculous or whatever. I knew I was over max pressure.
Yeah.
You don't know what those are until you actually shoot them, but I know that I can create this like spread of powder charges with one bullet each. So then I would, over my chronograph, I would shoot these, and I don't even care about accuracy at all. I'm just shooting them. I could be shooting them into a bank, right? So
Hmm.
I'll usually use the opportunity to like zero a little bit, like if it's a new rifle, let's say. But
Yeah.
generally speaking, you will shoot one round and then you will shoot them until you start to see or feel a pressure sign, and you will just generally note what each round's speed was. So pressure signs that you're looking for safe pressures or to work your way up to max pressure. There's a couple different ways to do it. The biggest giveaway for me is a heavy bolt lift. And what's actually happening there when you fire your round and you're lifting your bolt back up, it's heavier than normal. And what's
Mm.
going on is that there's so much pressure in your case that the a bit of the case head, the metal, the brass there at the end, is flowing into the ejector in your bolt face. So the ejector
Well.
plunger basically is getting pushed into your bolt face, and a little bit of the metal is sort of flowing into that recess. And
Mm.
then as
Okay.
you lift your bolt, it's shearing that bit off. So you can see the result of that on your case as a little bit of shiny swipe mark, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
So that's what you're looking for. There's other ways of sort of um, how your primers look, if they're really flattened or cratered primers is what people call it. Different primer cups react differently, and different firing pins make different crater marks. So that's not a huge, great one to sort of judge your max
And
pressure.
when you're doing this testing, you're not like you're going to a max within some sort of researched logical reason, right? Like you're not exploding.
Yeah, more or less. I
You're
mean,
not maxing it out so much so that it's gonna potentially explode within your gun.
yeah, you're trying not to. I like to do enough research to know roughly where
Right.
max is going to be. It's different though for each projectile in each barrel. Like you
Hmm.
might get a little bit more pressure spikes with a given barrel. Different bore from one rifle to the other might be a little bit different.
Yeah.
So it will be different in every application, but you kind of know roughly where it's going to be, and you really just feel that bolt lift. That's the biggest
Yeah.
thing. So once you start to feel a heavy bolt lift, you stop. You know that's my max pressure. That's as far as I'm going. Now I know the scale. So I know, let's say for 6.5 Creedmoor, 2850 is where I hit max pressure. So I'm going to back it down a bit. Then I'm going to do what's called my accuracy test, and I'll take if I'm low on components, I'll do it in 3 round groups. I like to do it in five. Five is a lot better sample size for accuracy. But
Yeah.
I will then load. So I knew, let's say, uh, 43, 43 grains of H4350 got me up to my max pressure. So I'll back it down, let's say a full grain, and I will go, or let's say 2 grains, whatever. I'll get well under. And then again, I will build an increasing powder charge ladder, but I'll do it now in zero point 0.2 grain increments.
Yeah. Okay.
So, and I will load 5 rounds of each one. So
Yeah.
I'll pick a seating depth that's nominal. I'll say 30 thousandths off my lands, and that's sort of something else we get into. But being able to know where your bullet contacts your lands, there's a tool for that that allows
Yeah.
you to sort of just figure it out. Your max chamber dimensions, I guess, is what it's called. I'll back that off so I'm well clear of my lands, because you can create pressure spikes if you're pressing, if you're jamming your bullet into your lands. So make sure
Yeah.
your bullet's off of your lands, because seating
Why is
depth
it
is
called lands? What is the lands?
so the lands and the grooves. So it's in your rifling, the where I guess where the bullet lands, it's the high points. That's called the land, and then the groove
Ah,
is the recessed part of, it's where it's swaged or cut into the barrel
right.
itself.
Yeah.
So the lands and the groups. But the first thing in the throat that your bullet makes contact with is called the lands. And as long as your bullet, when it's chambered, is clear of your lands, then you know your pressures are going to be pretty much normal. So
Yeah.
accuracy. So I'll pick 30 thousandths, let's say, or 20 thousandths off my lands for my accuracy test, and I'll load up 5 rounds of each powder charge in 0.2 grain increments, and then I will shoot them very carefully, taking my time for accuracy. And this is where you want your groups. Doesn't matter where your group lands as long as they stick close, kind of thing. So
Yeah.
this is just about group shooting. So I'll do it either prone or on a bench. Just take your time, make sure there's no sun in your eyes, make sure there's no mirage. Like, this is where you want to take your
Yeah.
time. So then you'll notice that some groups will be better than others, and you'll pick. Generally speaking, there's a bit more theory behind this as to uh, velocity flat spots. As you do your velocity test, so if you were to graph your velocity, your single round velocity test, usually the more powder you put in your case, the faster the bullet's going to go, right? Well,
Yeah.
that's not always the case. They'll reach a point where it plateaus, and
Mm.
then it'll go up, and it'll plateau, and it'll go up. So those plateaus are generally where you'll find your accuracy nodes. You shoot your accuracy tests, and your smallest group, it'll go from big and it'll shrink down to small, and then it'll go to big and it'll shrink down to
Mm.
small. These are these nodes, these harmonic frequencies that you're finding. So
Cool.
as the explosion goes off, your barrel starts to whip, and it will release the bullet at a certain time. So if you have more powder, the bullet's going faster. It's going to leave the barrel at a different time. That's what you're seeing when when your groups are shrinking and expanding and shrinking.
Right.
If you find that you have a small group at a powder charge that also matches a flat spot or a plateau on your velocity test, you know you're barking up the right tree. So
I
that's
see. This is all coming together now. This makes sense
yeah.
now as to I was like, how do you know? You're just like picking some random thing out of thin air. No, it's actually your gun is telling you
Telling you, it's
this is what
absolutely
works.
yeah, that's
Yeah,
absolutely.
that's very cool.
It's telling you with its group size. Now, then that gives you a rough powder charge. So let's say, yeah, 40.2 grains is where your smallest group was for your accuracy test. You know it's under your max charge, max pressure, and you know that it happens to correlate to a flat spot when you were doing your velocity test. That's a great place. Now, that's pretty much your load. All you're doing now is what's called a seating depth test. That's your last step, and that's fine tuning what you have there. So, seating depth again is how far your bullet's pressed into the case, and that's the starting point for how far from the crown of the barrel your bullet starts. So now
Yeah.
it's going a given speed. So all of your powder charges are the exact same. They're 40.3. Where the bullet starts, closer or farther from the crown of the barrel, is also going to fine tune that harmonic. You're basically fine
Right.
tuning the harmonic. So if you had
That's so cool. I had no idea that that
yeah,
was a thing.
yeah. So let's say you had a 0.5 half-inch group, let's say, with your best powder charge, and now you can fine tune that. So you'll start. You have to know where your bullet makes contact. So I'll
Yeah.
start usually at 10 thousandths backed off my lands, and I'll do it in 5 thousandth increments, working my way out to I don't know, 50 thousandths. I mean, I've got some rifles to shoot at 100 thousandths, like off my land, so a big
Wow.
jump. Um, yeah, so don't be scared of a jump. Certain bullets like jumps better. Hybrid ogives don't really care so much about jumps than some of the other ogive shapes. But um, you'll start at 10 thousandths, and usually I find a lot of my bullets, especially the hybrid ones, like about 30 thousandths to 50 thousandths of jump. And then the
Okay.
same deal. So your powder charge is the same. You're only changing your seating depth, and that's just your micrometer on your seating die.
Yeah.
And you do 5 rounds of that, and then you'll move to 5 thousandths longer and 5 thousandths longer and 5 thousandths longer. And you're just, again, shooting for groups, watching the accuracy change, and you'll watch the same thing as your bullets. Your groups will grow and shrink. They'll generally be a lot smaller now because you're starting with with a small group or with roughly the powder charge that you know is going to work.
Yeah.
And then you will again just find the seating depth that works for you. And once you've done that, you're pretty much done, and you've found the
Voila.
best load for your rifle. Yeah,
Wow. Yeah, man, that is quite the process to get to the golden bullet, but obviously the accuracy of that when you have it is incredible.
yeah, exactly. And you can now sort of really see that if you were to buy ammo off the shelf, you have no idea what it is,
Yeah.
right? Your
Yeah.
rifle may like it, and let's say it does like it could like it a whole lot better if it was fine
Yeah.
tuned for your rifle. Like
Yeah.
really
Yeah,
get
no kidding.
a lot of good
It
results out of it.
it kind of makes it incredulous though when you think about how I mean, not not to say that people shouldn't reload, but it is impressive at how accurate some people can be with just factory ammo off the shelf. Um, but also incredible how much more easy you could make your life if you actually had consistent, um, repeatable ammo that was the same every single time.
Yeah, pretty much. And you can get really good factory ammo. And if you're running a good barrel, and you have a really top notch rifle, sometimes factory ammo will work great.
Yeah.
But it's almost always you can fine tune. You can get better results if you
Oh yeah.
to your specific load. Like if
Go all the way down
you're
the rabbit hole.
yeah, if your standard for accuracy is a half inch, you can usually find that with some top quality factory ammo. It's pretty
Yeah.
easy to get that with some reloads. You know, even if you're new at reloading, it's pretty easy to get that. Generally speaking, with a factory barrel. But
Yeah.
if you're getting into bench rest, or for me, my standard accuracy for my comp guns is about a quarter inch groups at 100 yards.
Yeah.
That's almost impossible to find with factory ammo. So
Yeah.
it's
And
something
that's
I'm
all of
required.
this testing that we've been talking about is happening at 100 yards?
Yeah, all your accuracy testing
Yeah.
is for center fire is at 100 yards. That's
Yeah.
pretty standard.
Okay. Amazing. That is very cool. Do want to be mindful of time. So I have one last question here and then maybe a couple of random rapid fire questions.
Sure.
But have you had any mishaps? I mean, we've talked a lot about the benefits of why people should or could reload their ammo, but maybe talk for a second about the mishaps of reloading your ammo or things to be aware of when you're reloading, or like the most common mistakes that happen.
Yeah, I can't say I've had any sort of mishaps.
Good.
Actually, that's not true, but they're not safety mishaps. So
Okay.
um, the only thing that has happened to me was really hashing down my process. And like I said before, it's about consistency of what you do. So every
Yeah.
process that you do, you have to do the exact same thing. Like, for me, it comes down to when I'm deburring my case mouth, I spin it 3 times, and then I move, and I'll spin it 3 times. Or when
Oh
I'm
wow.
resizing, I'll resize, I'll spin it 100, you know, 120 degrees, hit it again. Like everything has to be exactly the same. So
Yeah.
part of that was my charging my cases procedure. And you have a funnel, and you have a little pan, and you pour it into your case, and then you move it to the next case before you put your pan back on your powder charge. One time I was doing a long range rifleman's course in Penticton, actually, and so I loaded up 100 rounds and spent a lot of time getting ready for this course. And I loaded up a magazine, and I was just getting clicks every single time. It was
Oh
one of the
no.
first times I'd loaded up 100 rounds. And I think it might I'd get 1 out of 5 rounds would just go click, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. I thought it was like maybe something with my firing pin or whatever, but I was not charging those rounds. So I'd
Oh.
not been paying attention, and I'd put the powder or the funnel onto the next round, fiddled around or something, moved it to the next one, and or I think what I did is actually I'd run left to right, and then I'd move upper row in my reloading block. So just for reference, like your cases sit into a reloading block
Mm.
like that. So I think I was running left to right, and then I was going up and then over, and I would skip a case every time I got to the end row.
Oh no.
Yeah, I just looked like a bit of an idiot in front of the instructor or whatever. But as far as that, I learned to get my process for
Yeah, I
very
was gonna say at least that's the
specifically.
worst of it is just looking like an idiot,
Yeah,
not something explosively wrong happening.
yeah, nothing too
Or
expensive.
sorry.
Yeah, nothing definitely dangerous. I mean, it can be dangerous if you're not paying attention. Getting above your max powder charge. I guess there's one sort of area that you could pay attention to in that some powders are temperature sensitive. So if you are right up against max pressure, you're pushing these rounds as hard as you can, and you've done all your testing in the winter. Let's say you go out on a 35-degree day, your your speeds, your powder burn rate changes with temperature, so you could
Yeah.
get above your max safe pressures from winter to summer. Let's say that's something you have to pay attention to. That's why it's not a great idea to run your rounds hard up against your max pressure.
Yeah.
So it can happen. Things can explode. Like when you're doing load development, you got to be careful. Wear safety glasses for sure when you're doing your load
Yeah.
development because you can get case head separations if you were to be way over pressure, and it
Yeah.
will blow out your ejection port and make a bit of a mess. So it's something
Yeah.
to be careful about. Another thing to really be careful about is when you're charging. There's two things. One, when you're charging your cases, the powder you choose, you've poured into your powder dispenser method, whether it's an electronic one or not. Always keep that powder can. They come in 1 pound or 8 pound containers. Right beside your powder dispenser until you're done with it and put it straight back. So if you're ever to mix up burn rates, let's say you had some Magnum rounds you were loading and you put a pistol powder or a fast burning powder in and filled up your Magnum cases with the same weight, that could be very, very dangerous because now you
Yeah.
have far faster burn rate. It will just explode. It'll be a bomb basically.
Ugh,
Um, and the other
yikes.
thing is double charging. Most cases will not allow you space wise, if you've done it right, to put two powder charges into the case. There are cases that will allow that, and in certain
Yeah.
situations, I think certain pistol cases don't fill up very high, and you can, if you don't move your funnel over to the next case, not paying attention, you can put two charges into
Double
one
charge.
case.
Wow.
That can be
Also
very
explode.
dangerous.
Yeah.
Yeah, very dangerous.
Yeah.
So there are things to
Or
be aware
I
of.
think I think the resizing is important. When I was testing out a pistol the other day and um the guy had reloaded his own ammo and I had gone through a box of factory and it was fine and then started going through the reloaded stuff and I'm trying to figure out now what step would have gone missed. Maybe the resizing of the casing, but either way, when you put this one particular bullet into the chamber, it didn't sit all the way down, like just right before the primer bit. It was kind of like mushroomed out just a little bit there. So I don't know what had happened, but yeah, it ended up jamming in the gun and we couldn't get the gun open. So that was an ordeal that we had to deal with
Okay,
and
so the
figure
case
out.
itself wouldn't go into battery the whole way. It was just sort of lodged
Yeah,
in.
so if you had the chamber open and you put, a factory ammo in it, it would go all the way in and it would sit almost like flush, right? And
Yeah,
then as soon as we you took that one out and you put one particular reloaded one in, it's at almost all the way in, but it stuck out just a little bit more. It was like mushroom just a little bit before, the primer area.
yeah, that makes sense. It's probably the resizing process. You're right. It wasn't resized down enough, and if it
Yeah,
was reloaded, your chamber might have been on the tight side. You're especially for a semi-auto. If it was a semi-auto pistol, that can
yeah,
be an out of battery detonation, so it can go home as far as it can go. The bolt can close on it, and you can get a strike with it's not in battery and not locked in. So that can be definitely, you got to be careful when you're doing that.
yeah. So that was interesting. It was funny because that happened right before we were gonna do this original interview, and then I thought, oh, I'll just tell that story. So
Yeah,
I now have my own, reloading mishap story. Not my own reload, but somebody
yeah,
else's. So things to be wary of is fully, like you said, getting that full size
mhm.
resizing die.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's lots of
Yeah,
little things that you'll find you can run into. Not a lot of them are safety issues, but some of them can be, and a lot of them are just things that you'll have troubles with. You
Yeah.
really have to sort of do your research on the processes and things like that.
Yeah.
Just setting up your dies so they resize properly, like in your given situation there, it's a little bit of a process to do right, and
Yeah.
once you get it, you get it, kind of thing. But it's a big learning curve. This is all
Yeah.
a big learning curve. It's definitely I think it's a worthwhile learning curve, personally, and I think it's pretty awesome for people to be able to reload their own ammo. I
Yeah.
remember the first big game animal I took with my own reload. It's a
Mm.
super just proud moment. I just felt really cool. Like
Yeah.
I found this animal and I took it with ammo I loaded myself, and it's a pretty
Yeah.
cool experience.
Yeah, it's definitely a different feeling knowing that you had a hand in every aspect
Yeah,
of that process. Yeah,
yeah,
that's
for
very
sure.
cool. Being mindful of time, I'm gonna shoot you off a couple of rapid fire questions that you can answer to the best of your ability. So, what would be? I should ask this first. Do you listen to podcasts?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
What would be your favorite podcast? It could be hunting or not related.
Favorite, boy, I do listen to a few. I think one of the most interesting ones is the Vortex Nation podcast.
Mm,
And it's the
okay.
guys that work at Vortex Optics. They've put together a podcast, and they're super entertaining and super knowledgeable.
Yeah.
They got a couple guys there that are just like encyclopedias on the history of certain rounds and things like that. It's always a good watch. That's
Yeah.
probably one of my favorites.
Okay.
Um, yeah, I mean
Good.
the competition world. There's a few there that I really enjoy too. But yeah, I think Vortex Nation is probably my favorite.
Okay. What's your best recommended road snack?
Road snack. Mm, I have a soft spot for dried mangoes. I don't know why.
Dried mangoes. Okay.
Yeah,
That was not what I was expecting.
yeah, like
Um,
trail mix kind of stuff.
yeah. Are you a tent or a tarp kind of guy? Like proper tents with a floor or just throw a tarp up out there?
I'm kind of a tent kind of guy. I like
Yeah.
a nice footprint and a nice waterproof tub,
Yeah.
and try to the whole like trekking pole thing is you save a few ounces here and there, but I don't know, man.
Yeah.
Going
not,
up on
not
some
necessarily the thing.
frozen ground like that, I don't know. It just doesn't do it for me.
Yeah, fair. If you had the option between a truck, like a truck camper or a tent, what would you pick?
For the kind of hunting I do, it'd probably still have to be a tent. I mean, having
Yeah.
a base camp of a truck camper would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
This moose hunt I'm going to do, it's going to be kind of truck camper and quad style, so it's got its
Okay.
place. But
Yeah.
nothing like getting in the backcountry out where the animals are and staying there is
Yeah.
you can't beat a small
Yeah, definitely. And you kind of touched on this a little bit, but are you a trekking poles guy or no poles?
tent. I think trekking poles are awesome. I think they can benefit people a lot more than they think. It's you don't have to be an old man to make use of you got an animal on your back and you're going downhill. I don't care who you are, you will love a set of trekking poles.
Yeah, I just got my first set of trekking poles, and I went on a 12-kilometer uphill both ways. No, I mean, it was uphill halfway and then back down. And man, if I did not have a set of trekking poles, I probably would have died. It was so steep.
Made a difference,
Um,
didn't it? Starts with
I'm in love
fun.
now. I don't even know what I was doing with my life before. I will never go on any sort of weighted anything without trekking poles again.
Yep. And added benefit, set of shooting sticks. You know how you just lock the handles together? Shooting
Yeah,
sticks.
yeah, exactly. I never even thought of that. There you go, multi-purpose. Now I love them even more reason to bring them.
You bet.
Amazing. Well, thank you, Dan, for being on the show today. Very much appreciated. We will definitely have you back again. There is so much content that we have not talked about. There is so much information that you have. So yes, thank you again for being on the show. And yeah, everybody stay tuned.
Yeah.
Thanks
My
everybody for
pleasure. It's
watching and
always
listening
good to-
wherever you are. Don't forget to like and subscribe. You can find us everywhere that podcasts and video podcasts are found.
And if you have any comments or reviews, please drop them down below. We will get back to you, or you can reach us at questions@entrypointhunting.com.
And if you happen to know somebody who you'd recommend we talk to, whether they're an expert, an amateur, or growing in the sport, be sure to tag them in the comments or shoot us a message with their info.
And until next time, stay hungry.
Hungry indeed.